Finn Ashton had learned over the course of his medical career that waiting was often more dangerous than action. Waiting let the mind wander. Waiting made you notice things you would rather ignore, like the way the air in the palace gardens hummed at a frequency just below hearing, or how the pale blue light drifting from the crystal trees made his skin prickle as if it were being gently scanned. He stood near a fountain that recycled water through a gravity-defying loop, pretending not to stare at the alien architecture rising around him. Everything here looked almost human, in the same way a reflection in warped glass almost looked familiar. The palace belonged to a species that could pass for human at a glance. Light skin, symmetrical faces, expressions readable enough to be unsettling. Only their long ears gave them away, sweeping back gracefully from their heads, twitching faintly with emotion. Finn had been warned not to stare. He stared anyway, though he told himself it was professional curiosity. After all, this was a medical exchange program, not tourism. He was here to observe, assist, and above all, not interfere with royal matters. That last instruction had been repeated no fewer than 12 times, which Finn suspected meant it was the most important one. He adjusted the medical kit at his side and checked the time on his wrist implant. He had been told to wait in the gardens until summoned. Gardens, it turned out, were universal lies. This one was less about relaxation and more about subtle intimidation. Statues of past rulers lined the paths, their eyes following him in a way that felt entirely intentional. Somewhere deeper in the palace, energy conduits thrummed like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. Finn wondered, not for the first time, how many people had stood where he was standing and made poor life choices. He was mid-thought, considering whether sitting down would be considered disrespectful or merely ignorant, when something collided with his leg at knee height. He looked down just in time to see a very small figure lose balance and sit hard on the polished stone path. The impact was followed by a sharp intake of breath, then the unmistakable sound of a child winding up for tears. "Oh no," Finn muttered, already crouching. "Please don't scream. I am medically trained, not politically trained." The child was no more than 3 years old, with white skin and black hair that fell into her eyes in soft, unruly strands. Her long ears drooped as she looked at her scraped knee, which was already beating with a thin line of blue-tinged blood. She sniffed once, then again, and then the crying began in earnest. Finn acted before his brain could interfere. He lifted her easily, settling her on his hip the way he had seen parents do back on Earth, murmuring soothing nonsense as he opened his kit with one hand. Hey, it's okay. You should see the other guy. That floor never stood a chance." The child clutched the front of his jacket with surprising strength, her sobs hitching as curiosity began to override pain. Finn cleaned the wound carefully, applying a sealant that adjusted itself to alien biochemistry. "There," he said gently. "Battle scar. Very impressive. You'll be telling stories about this for years." She hiccuped, then laughed, a sound that echoed too loudly in the quiet garden. Finn felt it before he saw it. The hum of the air shifted. The light seemed to dim, not physically but socially, as if the garden itself had become aware of witnesses. He looked up. Queen Neris stood at the far end of the colonnade, her pale hair falling in intricate braids down her back, her long ears held perfectly still. Behind her, the royal guard formed a silent wall of armor and controlled menace. Their eyes were on Finn, all of them. Finn froze, the child still in his arms. The queen took a single step forward, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke, her voice calm and clear, carrying easily across the garden. "You've made your choice now." Finn swallowed. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a small, hysterical voice began laughing. Finn's first instinct was to laugh, not because anything was funny, but because laughter had saved him before in situations where fear would have been less productive. Unfortunately, his body chose the wrong kind of laugh, a thin, nervous sound that escaped his throat before he could stop it. The child in his arms paused, looked up at him with watery eyes and patted his chest as if reassuring him that everything would be fine. This, Finn thought distantly, was not how he had imagined meeting a reigning monarch. Queen Neris continued to approach at an unhurried pace. Each step seemed measured, ceremonial, as if the garden itself were counting for her. The guards followed at a precise distance, their armor whispering softly with every movement. Finn noticed, absurdly, that the princess's long ears perked up the moment her mother came closer, then flattened again as she tightened her grip on him. He shifted his weight, suddenly aware that he was still holding the royal heir like a sack of extremely valuable, extremely fragile produce. "I can put her down," Finn said quickly, realizing far too late that no one had actually told him to speak. "I mean, if that's what protocol prefers, which I assume it does, very strongly." No one corrected him. The queen stopped a few paces away, her gaze fixed not on Finn, but on her daughter. For a moment, the silence stretched so thin it felt ready to snap. Then Princess Ayla buried her face in Finn's shoulder and made a small, defiant sound that could only be described as a growl in training. A murmur rippled through the guards. Queen Neris's lips curved, just slightly. "She has chosen you," she said. Finn blinked. "With respect, Your Majesty," she tripped. "That's not usually a binding legal process where I'm from." The queen's long ears twitched, a gesture Finn was quickly learning could mean anything from amusement to restrained violence. "You lifted her," Neris replied. "You soothed her pain. You held her above the ground while her blood touched your hands. Our laws are clear." Finn looked down at his palms, still faintly stained blue despite the self-cleaning weave of his gloves. "Of course they are," he murmured. "Why wouldn't they be?" The guards closed in, not aggressively, but firmly enough that Finn understood resistance was theoretical at best. He was guided, escorted, really, through archways that recognized the queen's presence by blooming with light. The palace interior responded to movement, surfaces shifting subtly to accommodate them. Finn found himself cataloging it all automatically, part of his medic brain filing away stress as data. Adaptive corridors, bioresponsive lighting, a society that blended biology and technology so seamlessly that even their laws felt alive. Princess Ayla refused to walk. Every attempt Finn made to lower her resulted in a dramatic tightening of limbs and a look of betrayal so intense he gave up after the third try. "Okay," he whispered to her. "You win. But just so you know, this is terrible for my posture." She giggled. They reached a wide chamber overlooking the gardens from above. The doors sealed behind them with a sound like a held breath finally released. Queen Neris turned to face him fully now, her expression composed, her presence filling the room in a way that had nothing to do with size. "You are now bound as her guardian," she said. "You will remain within the palace grounds. You will stand between my daughter and harm. You will not abandon her." Finn nodded slowly, processing each sentence like a diagnosis he very much did not want to give. "Is there a pamphlet?" he asked. "Or a trial period?" The queen studied him for a long moment, then said, "No." Finn sighed. "I was afraid you'd say that." Ayla yawned against his shoulder, utterly unconcerned with the collapse of his previous life plans. As the guards withdrew, Finn realized with a strange mix of dread and reluctant awe that the palace had already adjusted to him. The lights softened, the air warmed. Somewhere deep in its systems, a decision had been logged. He hadn't chosen this, but something, or someone, had chosen him. By the third day, Finn learned two important truths about the palace. The first was that nothing here was accidental. The second was that Princess Ayla had an alarming amount of energy for someone so small. She woke him before the artificial dawn cycle had fully brightened the room, standing on his chest with all the authority of a conquering general. Finn opened one eye to find her long ears silhouetted against the soft glow of the ceiling panels, her black hair sticking up in defiance of physics. "Is the palace on fire?" he murmured. "Or is this just you again?" She grinned, clearly pleased to have been acknowledged, and bounced once for emphasis. Finn groaned and rolled to a sitting position, already resigned to the fact that his internal clock was now permanently synchronized to a toddler's whims. Somewhere in the walls, sensors adjusted the temperature and lighting, responding to Ayla's excitement like a loyal, overfunded nanny. Life as a sworn guardian turned out to be less about standing heroically in corridors and more about following a small alien child through a palace that seemed determined to test his reflexes. Ayla treated the sprawling halls as an obstacle course, darting between columns that shifted position when she laughed. climbing furniture that politely reshaped itself to avoid injury. Finn chased after her, apologizing to startled attendants and discovering that palace etiquette manuals did not cover phrases like, "Please stop running toward the energy conduit." Despite the chaos, something strange began to happen. The guards stopped watching him quite so closely. Servants greeted him by name. The palace systems recognized his presence, doors opening for him without hesitation, as if he had always belonged there. Finn caught himself wondering when exactly the line had blurred between guest and fixture. Queen Nerys observed all of this from a careful distance. She did not interfere, did not instruct, only watched with those pale eyes that missed nothing. When Finn finally worked up the courage to speak with her directly, it was over a meal composed of foods that hummed faintly on the plate. "She doesn't seem to realize I'm supposed to be teaching her dignity," Finn said, as Ayla attempted to feed a floating fruit to a decorative hologram. "Or survival instincts." Nerys tilted her head. "She is learning both," she replied. "From you." Finn nearly choked. "Respectfully, Your Majesty, my survival instincts mostly involve running away from large problems and making jokes about it." The Queen's ears twitched. "And yet, you have not run." That night, Finn sat beside Ayla's sleeping platform, watching her chest rise and fall. Her long ears twitched in dreams, reacting to things only she could see. He realized with a quiet jolt that he had stopped counting the days until his assignment ended. The palace lights dimmed around them, and for the first time since his arrival, Finn did not feel like he was waiting for something to go wrong. The first sign that something was wrong came in the form of silence, and Finn had learned enough by now to distrust it. The palace was never truly quiet. It breathed, whispered, adjusted itself constantly to the lives moving through it. So when the corridor outside Ayla's learning chamber went unnaturally still, Finn's shoulders tensed before his mind caught up. Princess Ayla was on the floor assembling a tower of floating geometry blocks that changed color every time she stacked them incorrectly, which was often and intentional. She glanced up at him, ears flicking. "You're making the worried face," she said, her accent still uneven but improving at a rate Finn found faintly terrifying. "I don't have a worried face," Finn replied automatically. "This is my thinking face. Very similar, less screaming." The lights overhead flickered, just once. Ayla froze. Finn moved without hesitation, scooping her up and stepping back toward the wall. "Okay," he muttered, activating his wrist implant. "I officially don't like that." The palace responded sluggishly, doors half forming before stalling. A low vibration rolled through the floor, more felt than heard. Finn's medical instincts screamed system failure, while his newer, less welcome guardian instincts supplied the horrifying follow-up. "Not accidental." Ayla clutched his jacket, pressing her face into his chest. "Is it breaking?" "No," Finn said, forcing calm into his voice. "It's resting aggressively." The corridor lights flared back to life as armored figures appeared at the far end, moving too fast, their formation wrong. Finn recognized the difference instantly. These weren't royal guards. Their armor was similar in design but sharper, stripped of ceremonial markings. Dissidents, then, or worse, loyalists to an idea Finn didn't fully understand yet. He backed into a service alcove as energy fire scorched the space where he had just stood. The palace reacted now, walls thickening, floors shifting, but not fast enough. Finn held Ayla tight, shielding her instinctively, his body acting as if he were back in an emergency ward instead of the heart of an alien monarchy. "Stay very still," he whispered to her. "Pretend we're furniture." "I don't want to be furniture," she said faintly. "Me neither," Finn admitted, "but we'll make very convincing furniture." A blast struck the corridor junction, sending a shock wave through the alcove. Finn felt the impact in his bones, felt the palace strain to compensate. He glanced down at Ayla, expecting tears, fear, anything. Instead, she looked furious. "They're being rude," she declared. Finn almost laughed. Almost. The royal guards arrived moments later, precise and overwhelming, the fight ending as quickly as it began. The attackers were subdued, restrained by living restraints that grew from the floor itself. The palace settled, lights dimming to a calmer spectrum. Queen Nerys entered last. She took in the damage, the restrained intruders, and finally Finn, who was still holding her daughter, his back against the wall. Her gaze sharpened, something cold and dangerous flickering beneath her composure. "You were harmed?" she asked Ayla. "No," Ayla said. "Finn made himself a wall." The Queen's eyes shifted to him. "You did not hesitate." Finn shrugged weakly, adrenaline making his hands shake now that it was over. "Habit. Also, I'm very bad at ducking." For a long moment, Neris said nothing. Then she stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You understand now," she said, "what your choice means." Finn looked down at Ayla, then back at the Queen. "I think," he said carefully, "that I understood it the moment she stopped crying in the garden." The tension eased, just slightly, and for the first time, Queen Neris did not look at him as a complication, but as something far more dangerous to her carefully balanced world, an ally. After the attack, the palace treated Finn differently, though no one ever acknowledged the change aloud. Doors opened faster for him. Corridors adjusted their curvature to shorten his path. Even the air seemed more attentive, as if the palace itself had decided he was now a critical component rather than a tolerated variable. Finn noticed all of it and pretended not to, because noticing made it real, and real meant permanent. Princess Ayla, on the other hand, embraced the change enthusiastically. She announced to anyone who would listen that Finn was the wall, and demonstrated this by repeatedly hiding behind his legs whenever a guard appeared. The guards, to their credit, accepted this without comment, though one of them once inclined his head solemnly toward Finn and said, "Your structural integrity is impressive." Finn thanked him and decided not to ask whether that was a joke. Queen Neris summoned Finn more often now, usually under the pretense of discussing Ayla's progress. These meetings took place in quieter chambers, spaces grown rather than built, where bioluminescent veins pulsed softly through the walls. Ayla was usually present for the first few minutes, demanding Finn's attention, climbing onto his lap or tugging his sleeve to show him something vitally important, such as a hovering insect that sang when it was insulted. Eventually she would be coaxed away by attendants, leaving Finn alone with the Queen. "You have altered her sense of safety," Neris said during one such meeting, her tone neutral. Finn shifted in his seat. "I'm sorry?" "She no longer looks for guards first," the Queen continued. "She looks for you." Finn considered this. "In my defense, I'm easier to spot. I'm the only one who trips over invisible steps." The Queen's ears flicked, the smallest sign of amusement. "You make light of serious things." "It's either that," Finn replied, "or panic. Panic has terrible posture." Silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, but heavy. Finn became aware that these conversations were no longer interrogations. They were exchanges. Neris spoke of governance, of the pressure placed on Ayla as heir, of traditions that demanded distance where instinct demanded closeness. Finn listened, offering perspective when he could, humor when the weight grew too heavy. He told her about Earth hospitals, about lives decided by moments and hands held through fear. He did not realize at first how much of himself he was revealing. One evening, as the artificial sky dimmed to a deep violet, Finn found Neris watching Ayla sleep. The Queen stood very still, her long ears relaxed, her expression unguarded in a way Finn had never seen. "She trusts you completely," Neris said quietly. Finn nodded. "Kids know," he said. "They don't care about titles, just whether you stay when things get loud." Neris looked at him, then really looked, and Finn felt the strange sensation of being evaluated not as a guardian, not as a human curiosity, but as a person. "And you will stay?" Finn smiled faintly. "I already am." Ayla stirred, murmuring something incomprehensible, and Finn reached out instinctively, resting a hand near her shoulder. The palace lights softened in response, and Neris watched the interaction as if memorizing it. In that moment, Finn understood that guardianship had never been the endgame. It was the beginning of something far more complicated. The ceremony was smaller than Finn expected, which should have been his first clue that it mattered more than any grand spectacle. The palace adjusted itself for the gathering with quiet precision, walls opening into a circular chamber grown from pale crystal and living alloy. The air carried a low harmonic tone that resonated gently through Finn's bones, a reminder that this world still followed rules he was only beginning to understand. Princess Ayla stood beside him, very serious in a way only a child pretending to be grown could manage. Her long ears were adorned with thin bands of light that shifted color with her heartbeat. She held Finn's hand tightly, as if afraid the palace might suddenly decide to reclaim him. Finn squeezed back, offering a reassuring smile that earned him a whisper. "Don't go," she said. "I'm right here," he replied. "I'd have to get lost in about 6 layers of alien politics first." She seemed satisfied with that. Queen Neris stepped forward as the gathered nobles and guards fell silent. Her presence filled the chamber, not with force, but with certainty. Finn realized, watching her now, that he no longer felt the instinctive tension he once had around her. Respect, yes. Awe, occasionally. Fear, no. That absence startled him more than anything else. "You came to us as an observer," Neris said, her voice carrying easily. "A temporary presence. You were meant to watch from a distance and leave unchanged." Finn resisted the urge to wave. This did not feel like a wave-appropriate moment. "Instead," the Queen continued, "you acted. You comforted. You protected. You accepted a bond without understanding its cost, and you honored it without hesitation." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Finn felt Ayla straighten proudly at his side. "By our laws," Neris said, turning her gaze fully on him now. "A guardian who remains by choice becomes more than a shield. They become kin." The words settled into Finn slowly, like a diagnosis that required careful interpretation. Kin. Family. He thought of Earth, of contracts and assignments and neat endings. He thought of the man he had been when he first stood in the garden, trying not to touch anything important. "Well," he said softly, unable to help himself, "this is going to make filing my transfer paperwork very awkward." Ayla giggled. Even some of the nobles smiled. The Queen's ears twitched. "From this moment," she said, "Finn Ashton is bound not only by duty, but by belonging." The palace responded instantly. The harmonic tone shifted, warming, deepening. Finn felt something register at the base of his skull as his implant synchronized with systems far beyond human design. Doors, corridors, safeguards, all of it now recognized him fully. Not as a guest, not as an anomaly, as a constant. Later, as the gathering dispersed, Finn found himself back in the gardens where it had all begun. Ayla ran ahead, chasing light creatures that flitted between the crystal trees. Queen Neris walked beside him, the silence between them companionable. "You could have resisted," she said. "Many would have." Finn shrugged. "I've seen what happens when people walk away because it's easier. I didn't like who I was when I did that." She studied him, then nodded once. "You have changed." "So has my definition of normal," Finn replied. "Turns out it includes royal toddlers and sentient architecture." Ayla returned, slipping her hand into his again. The suns dipped lower, casting soft light through the garden. Finn watched the palace glow around them, alive and aware, and felt something settle inside his chest. He hadn't chosen this world, but he had chosen to stay, and for the first time in his life, that choice felt exactly right.